Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Angelyn Toth. She is the founder of Xenia, a creative development center on Bowen Island in British Columbia. It's a retreat center, and it's actually turned 28 years this year, very recently. She is also the author of 3 books, a facilitator, a grandmother, a mother, and a lover of horses and nature, and loves the process of transformation. Welcome, Angelyn. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Irina. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. So please share with us, how did you become a single mom?
Excuse me. It's been many, many years for me. My husband passed away when our daughter was 5 years old, and very tragically, very suddenly. And she is now 35 years old. So give you a context of how long ago I was a single mother. Yes, it was a very devastating experience, telling your daughter that her daddy is dead. So that was probably the toughest assignment I ever had to do right off the bat. And then the rest was living as a single mother, trying to make up for the fact that her father wasn't here anymore. Those were very big challenges in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And what was the struggles you were facing with? Was it financial, emotional?
Emotional. Financially, I was actually set up very well by my husband before he passed away. So I was actually given an insurance check very quickly within 2 weeks. I still hadn't come up for air. I was in a state of shock, complete shock for a couple of weeks, well, it was months. So when this check came, it was almost a bit of a intrusion. I know that sounds really weird to say, but because I didn't even know there was an insurance amount of money. I didn't know that. So it was a shock, and it was, but at the same time, it was also a wonderful thing because on the financial end of things, I didn't have to worry. It was more the emotion, the tragedy of losing this person, mostly for my daughter. He and I had actually separated and gotten back and separated. We were co-parenting. So, but the devastation was really for my daughter. Yeah.
And how did you fulfill the shoes of both parents?
Actually, it's been a difficult journey. If I had a nemesis, it's more about the relationship, trying to create another dad for my daughter. He was 41 and I was in my mid-30s. I was in my mid-30s. And so I had different relationships, trying to make up for daddy, trying to make a daddy. And, it was very, very difficult for me, though there were lots of lovely men, lots of great relationships. You just can't ever do that. You can never replace daddy, ever. And if there was any message I could put out there, I mean, you can have a wonderful man that comes into your life, but then if it doesn't work out, it's a double sorry, a double devastation.
Yeah.
I think you should get some water.
Go ahead.
For a moment.
Yes. So, and I understand it was difficult, and my kids' daddies didn't die, but the same kind of thing happened when my daughter was 5 years old. My son was born, and the relationship was ended. It was over. It was similar feelings of, I haven't tried to bring in another daddy, although I had in my head, like, how am I going to be a mom and a dad, and I need somebody, I need some man to fulfill the shoes, but
Yeah.
I didn't go that route.
Yeah, I did a couple of things that I love to share. One of them, my daughter's biggest fear as a little girl was that I was going to die next. Like when her dad died out of the blue, it was such a shock. There was no closure. There was no saying goodbye. And so her next fear was mommy's going next, you know. So what I did was I wrote her this one morning. I woke up and put the candle on, and I wrote a 5-page letter. And I just told her that in the event that I was taken before she was 21 years old or so, before she was an adult, that it must be because she's a great student, because only the best students get the hardest assignments, and that she would be okay, but I would always be with her, and that she would always tune in and connect with me. And then I poured out my heart about what I would like her to know as a young girl and as a teenager and as a mother of her own children, and just kind of poured out what I would love her to have known about my views and values and thoughts about her. And then at the end I said, this is going to be tucked into an envelope, and I really hope and pray that when you're 21, we have a glass of wine together and we open this and share it. But in the event that it doesn't happen, so it would be a communication. And I know that I recommend every parent, I don't care if you're young and you think you're going to live forever and everything's going to be great, just do a little video clip or a little letter in the event of, because none of us know. And that to me felt like a communication from the dead, so to speak. It felt like a way to bridge a gap, especially if you go suddenly, if a person's ill and, you know, sick for a while. And that's one thing, because the child or the adult child gets used to that idea. But when a person's taken suddenly, whether it be death or separation, a lot of people separate and they never come back into that child's life. So, which is a horrible thing, but anyway, I highly recommend that. The other thing I did was I created a village to raise my child because my daughter Kasara has always been very, very interested in many things, and it took a lot. She was busy all the time. What's this? How's this? She, you know, 18 months, she's in the sink and she's doing dishes and bubbles, and she wants to learn with a knife, and you know, very young, she wanted to learn everything, and I was worn out. So and part of my retreat center was that village, and a couple of my very dear friends helped me to raise her. Crystal, her godmother, and she was my best friend. She took up a lot of, you know, showing her how to bake and how to fix things and this and that. And to this day, I mean, she's very, very dear to Kasara. She also passed away in 2010 when my daughter was actually on her way to vet school, which was devastating, but at least she was an adult. But having community, having that support is very, very important. We cannot possibly do it alone. Like in most cultures, tribes of people, communities of people always do the best. Aunties and uncles and people supporting.
Yeah, yes. What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
Well, this is a very clear one, because it was the one very important thing I had with my daughter, and it was it would be a deal breaker, and that's respect. Respect for me and respect for others, respect for life, respect. And she could get away with a lot of stuff, but if she started dissing me off, or I watched some of her friends talk to their parents, and I'm like, what? I would never allow her to talk to me that way. So that was very, very important. And to this day, and she's teaching it. She's got a 2.5-year-old son and a 18-week-old baby. And I was just there for a week or so. And, you know, I see that passing down, the way she's talking to them, the way she's teaching them respect. And that is very, very critical. I think everything else flows out from there.
Right. Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back in time?
I love yourself more. You are beautiful. You are love. You are beyond anything you could ever imagine. You are. Love yourself. respect yourself. Yeah, I think it took me many, many, many years. It took me, I think, till I was 50 before I could honestly look in the mirror and say, I love you. It's a very long time. So I'd say to my younger self, get there quicker.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of advice would you give to single parents who are just stepping onto that journey of single parenthood?
I would say trust is my big thing, radical trust, you know, my book, Radical Trust. There's a much, I don't know what anyone's faith is or belief is. I'm not going to get into religion or anything like that, but just I have this in the chapter of one of my books, I talk about it's all handled. At some deepest, highest level, there is support for us at the very highest level. And if you can tune into that, because I think the feeling of separation, the feeling of isolation and alone, and I've got to do, oh my God, I do this all myself. Oh my God, you're not alone. You're not alone, not from a spiritual point of view and not from a physical point of view, unless you put yourself into that position. You don't have to be. So open up and be willing to receive support, receive help, receive friendships. So I would say, you know, you need to build your community around you, your friendships around you, and family. Some people have great families. My Kasara, my daughter, has married into an exquisite family. Mitch's mom and dad have been married. I think they're having their 50th anniversary coming up. Lovely, salt of the earth family. And they've got like hundreds of cousins and uncles and aunts and children, and they look out for each other. Somebody in the neighborhood needs to borrow a car, and somebody needs their child looking after. And that's a community. It's a beautiful, healthy family community. And not all families are built that way, but I'm very impressed, and I love the family that Kasara has moved into, of which is my family now too. They are my family too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How did you come up with create the Xenia Center?
How did it come into my life, or how did the name or the project, the whole thing?
Everything, the name and the project.
Okay, well, it's funny, but this vision of a retreat center followed me around for quite a few years. Like I would wake up in the morning and I would see meadows and trees, and I had the feeling that it was for the magical child within all to feel safe to be creative. And I didn't know why it was following me around, because I didn't exactly have the money to do something like that. I could see meadows and fields like it was substantial, like 40 acres. And then when my husband passed away, it took me a couple of years to get through that and handle all the legal matters and going through the emotions with my daughter and myself and all of that I had to go through. So it was about 2 years later. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I could buy a retreat center, because I had some money from the inheritance there. And I thought, wow. Now I was already living on Bowen Island, and I thought, well, to live on Bowen Island, if I wanted to stay on Bowen Island, I'd have to buy 2 acres or so. But if I was to have the vision in my mind, it would be with 40 acres, I'd have to go to Fort Saint somewhere, or Timbuktu, or somewhere other than Bowen Island, because I'd never be able to buy that land here. And so the real estate agent took me to a couple of 2-acre parcels, and I'm like, yeah, it's nice, but I couldn't reconcile the fact that it didn't have fields for horses. And so one day she phoned me and she said, Angelyn, there's a place I need to show you. It hasn't come on the market yet, and don't ask any questions, but would you come and see it? Because she knew my vision, right? So she brought me here, and I said, how many acres? And she said, 38. I said, 38 acres. Okay. Why are you bringing me here? She said, well, I just felt intuitively that this could be the place you've been talking about. And she said, it is very run down, but you could transform it. So as we drove down through the whole place, my whole being, my whole cellular system was going, oh my God, this is the place. Oh my God. Oh, wow. Whoa. And indeed, it was the place. It was very run down, very, very, but I could kind of see over the debris. I could see over the mess. I could project the vision onto it, so to speak. And I said, how much? And she told me it was about 4 times the amount. And I'm like, okay. She said, I thought you could find partnerships or investors. So I said, okay, let's see what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
So over the next year, I tried, and people would come here and they say, yeah, we could kind of clear cut this place, these gorgeous trees that are 1,000-year-old and hundreds of year old cedar trees and Douglas fir trees and Sitka spruce. And they're like, we'll get lots of money for those trees. And I'm like, whoa, bye. And then I went to different banks and I would tell them about my vision. And they said, well, show me the business plan and we'll see. And I said, I don't have a business plan, but I have a vision, you know. And they would laugh me out of the bank. Okay, bye. Close the door on your way out. And so, yeah, and others would come and all they could see was the debris, the mess. Like, what? This is a horrible, horrible place. And so I let it go. Very sad. I let it go. And then one day, about a year later, I'd completely let it go. Insane idea. Anyway, even if I could get it, what do I know about renovations and building and running a retreat center? Nothing. Who did I even think I was? Who do I think I am? Anyway, so it was a year later, I went to see Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer at the Pan Pacific in Vancouver. And Deepak said something that like really stuck with me. And the next morning I was walking around Kalani Lake and it backs onto this land. At the time, I, didn't know all of that. And I was sitting on this boardwalk where I was just sitting, contemplating. And I kind of was thinking, okay, I need to get a job, go back to the, what should I do? Go back to the corporate world or what? It'd been a few years since my husband had passed away and I need to get back to work. So I asked the question, just sitting there, how may I be of service? And I thought that was a weird question because I didn't speak that way in those days. I would now, but then it was like, oh, that's a weird way of putting it. What I meant was I need a job. What should I do? But what came so clearly was this whole thought, or it's hard to explain when you get a message, but it was like, buy the land behind you and begin the retreat center. And so I was mad and I stomped off the boardwalk and I'm like, I've been trying for a year. No, give me another assignment, give me another job. But something in me said, it's going to happen. And 12 weeks later, I had the place signed, sealed, and delivered in my name. So, and the price had come down $100,000.
Oh, wow.
It had come down substantially in the year that I was waiting. And it was still available for sale, which was a miracle in itself. That's how that came into being.
Incredible. I love it. And what about the name?
Xenia. I was at a retreat center called Hollyhock up in British Columbia, on Cortes Island. And I was at a workshop and I had just purchased this place and called it Visions, but I knew that wasn't the name. And I asked somebody, I posed it in one of the circles. I said, well, I have a retreat center on Bowen Island and I'm looking for the name. And after lunch, Chris Williamson, she was the leader of the program, singer-songwriter. And she came back and she'd been to the library upstairs at the library. And she said, I think I found the name. And she came back with a little book and on it, it was called Xenia. And I said, Xenia, what's Xenia? So I started reading it and it stands for hospitality and cross-pollination between guest and host. And it also stands for, it's like if a stranger comes to your door, like philo stranger, friend, instead of fear of the stranger, Xenia is friend to the stranger. So if somebody knocks at your door, you're to bring them in and feed them and take care of them, because you never know if it's the god of Xenia in disguise. So right away I adopted it. Yep, Xenia.
Mhm. Amazing. I love it. And having that center, how did it change your life?
It gave me some of the biggest lessons. It brought me to my absolute knees. It's been the absolute joy, bliss beyond belief, and it has taken me to the pit of despair. So, and everything in between. But yeah, the first 10 years was about developing, renovating, and we were having groups arriving and asking to be here, and we're like, we're not finished, we're still plumbing toilets in, but they wanted to be here. They didn't mind. They said, no, that's okay. So it had an attraction. People wanted to come here very quickly. And then we did a lot of work with youth, teenagers. We did some programs where we have we call them West Vancouver kids. There was some kids from Covenant House and street kids. And the other half were very wealthy kids. They had their Jeeps and their cell phones, you know, in the day, way back 28 years ago. And others that were pretty much street kids. But they had one thing in common, and that was they were all struggling with addiction. So we brought them together for 10-day programs, and it was phenomenal, transformational what happened to them, and the creativity that happened, and new reference points that were given. And then we did everything, all the different retreats, yoga and writers retreats. And I always knew that for me, it was about ushering people into nature and the silence so that they could hear themselves and they could hear their own spirit, their own inner guidance. And that was the thing that I've pretty much protected in the whole 28 years, that it stays very, very kind of non-dogmatic and very pure. And we didn't go down any specific road like a Buddhist thing or a Christian thing or this. It's inclusive of all ways of being. So it's been an amazing thing for sure, an amazing experience. And thousands of people from around the world have come here. And so I've gotten to enjoy and connect with many, many lovely people. That's been another great bonus.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Amazing.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you share, or unless I already asked you that question, for single parents?
Don't forget about your dream. Reclaim your dreams. Like, do not forget about yourself. Because, you know, our children, I heard this quote once, I think it was, I can't remember her name, a long, long time ago. I heard this quote and she said, the greatest gift I can give my child is my fulfillment. And when I first heard that, I thought, well, that's selfish. Aren't I supposed to sacrifice everything for my child? And then I thought about that. You know, my mother, growing up in England, my mother was very talented, but she was very oppressed as well. So she wasn't able to really come out as herself and be fulfilled because there was just so much oppression that she wasn't able to kind of come through. And I remember thinking, wow, I would have loved my mom to have been fulfilled. That would have meant so much to me. That would have been an amazing role model. So that's always stuck with me, that my fulfillment is the greatest gift I could give my child. And I know my daughter has got a sense sometimes that I loved Xenia more than her, and because I got so busy, I was at home. She always could come home from school and I was here. So that was one thing. I was never away at work, but I was here at work. And I think there was a little bit of feeling like I cared more about this than her, which was never, ever, ever, ever true. But, you know, as a child, we think different things. And as an adult now, I think she's understanding, because she too is going back to work like in 2 weeks, and she's struggling with that because of her children. but she's doing her PhD. She's an equine therapist right now, and she's moving on to do her PhD. But the struggle of, but I should be at home, but yet there's a part of me that needs to move on to that next level in her career.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she probably understands it more now than she did as a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, so important. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think before, earlier when we spoke, I think we mentioned the importance of having multiple streams of income, especially
Yes.
when you're a single parent.
Yes. And if you have a big vision, because money today, let's face it, it's really important. It's the difference between being free and fulfilled and not. And I must admit, although I had this place for 28 years, it took me about a decade and a half. It took about 15 years before I could really, really own this place.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being was I felt like my husband had to die for me to have this place, of which, of course, was not true. But that was the story my little ego mind was telling me. And, all of the, doubt and this and that and the other. And I love I can look back now and say I love how it happened. But at the time, it was devastating. I had a dark night of the soul experience where I got to the point where I'd poured so much money into this retreat center that we got to the point where I was 5 months behind in the mortgage, 3 years behind in property tax. I had disconnection notices. I had pile high of bills that I wouldn't even open because I was like, we can't, it was devastating. And I had about 2 years of fear. Oh, and I had a fraudulent investment that I had made before getting Xenia
Mm-hmm.
that ended up being fraudulent. And that was a domino effect that affected everything. And I went from like fear into terror. And I remember this time I was in such terror. I couldn't sleep. I was crying myself to sleep, woke up. This one morning, I walked my daughter up to the school bus. And I came back to my house and I sat on the couch and I said, it's over. The stress of everything was beyond anything I could any longer hold. So I remember vividly just giving myself to the terror. This is another teaching moment. I never knew this. I gave myself to what was trying to get my attention for the last couple of years. And I gave myself meaning. I fully felt it. I fully came into it. I fully embraced the terror. And it was like fire and heat. And it was just it was a really strong moment. And then so I don't know how long it took, 20 minutes, half an hour. But after that, everything was quiet. I didn't hear any more, you're gonna lose Xenia, you're gonna be a bag lady, oh my God, you're gonna be embarrassed because blah blah blah, in fact you're gonna die. That's how far the mind takes everything. So it was nothing, it was just quiet. And then the next day, and I followed instruction from a very deep place within. I just follow, do this, wash that, clear this. And then I was instructed to and with a friend of mine, Ariel, a very good friend of mine, we got on the phone and we raised $20,000 of gifted money in 3.5 hours. And up until then, I was begging everyone. I was pleading, trying to sell things. I couldn't even sell any. It was a devastating time. But here now, $20,000 of gifted money in 3.5 hours. We marched down to Vancouver, put the mortgage back on track. And then shortly after that, this lovely gentleman gave me a very big, like $60,000 as a gift. That put property taxes and this, and we built a couple of little buildings. And I later took care of his pig for 15 years, Charlie. That's a whole nother story over there. But anyway, it was kind of a miracle. So suddenly, and then I'd lost all the fear about money and losing it, and you know, it had died. Something had died inside of me completely and utterly. The fear, the terror had died. And so from that point forth, I knew it was somehow handled. And it was shortly after that time, maybe a year or so later, that this business came into my life, a relationship marketing business, because putting a retreat center together and maintaining it is a huge undertaking. It takes a lot of money, and it was never, ever sustainable. Never. It was like, at least not then. And I needed multiple streams of income. I needed another financial source to live this dream of my retreat center. It by itself couldn't support itself. So it needed another financial source. So when this was presented as an idea from a very wonderful friend of mine from Portland, and I'm like, no way, never, no. And she said, Angelyn, this can help your retreat center, and it will let people know about you. You'll have a network and this and that. And I'm like, no, never, ever, ever. Anyway, so she bugged me. She phoned me about 10 times, or 6 times in 10 days. I'll never forget that week. And at the end, she phoned me. It was a Sunday evening. And she's like, I see her name on my phone. And I'm like, this girl is sick. How could she ever possibly, what? And I felt sorry for her. So I said, okay. She said, Angelyn, before you say your final no, would you please listen to this audio clip? Well, in those days, we're going back 17 years. Took a while to download that technology. And then the thing that got me, this scientist was talking to this top leader in this company about this thing of highest and best. Have you done your highest and best? And as soon as I heard those words, have you done your highest and best? That was it. Something spoke to me, said, no, I haven't. I've got books in me. I've got this in me. I've got so much in me that I haven't done. And I know I want that. Whatever, I want my highest and best. So that's what got me to drive down to Portland. And I looked at it, and I was still resistant, reluctant, but I said, okay, what the heck? What have I got to lose? But more importantly, I was guided. I was deeply guided that this was what I was supposed to do next. And so I jumped on board. And yes, it did take me away from my retreat center energetically and physically for quite a few years to build and establish a very successful business. It shocked me, but I became top income earner in Canada and one of the top in the US. I got to the $1 Million Club in a few years. I won the highest award of leadership and servant leadership. And the BMW, the trips, I did the whole thing, which was really shocking. I never, ever thought I would take it that far. And, but you know what? It kept my retreat center buoyant. And after a number of years, I returned as leader of my retreat center again. And over these last couple of years, I've been at home developing the retreat center. And it's also fully booked a year in advance right now. So I really do feel, Irina, that I'm living that dream. And it is sustainable, but I needed, and I will probably always need, that other support, because it's a very big job to hold a vision like this together. Without partners, I'm a single mother. I'm a single woman. And I have never brought partners into the project because I needed to protect it for the essence of what it actually is, that a lot of people don't have a clue what I'm even talking about, but it's that essence, that purity of spaciousness and the gift of silence and the gift of nature.
So wow, that's such an amazing story. And the fact, yeah, it took a lot of probably of having an open mind and open heart to welcome those opportunities. And
well,
it
took a 2x4 across the head, because I wasn't listening. But when I went to the dark night of that was my dark night of the soul moment, when I'm sitting on the floor with all these bills and I fall into that complete surrender. and acceptance. I actually accepted this was it, you know, and that's when everything in my life changed. And I also realized I am helped. We are always helped. Every one of us is helped if we pay attention and then listen and then act upon the guidance. Even if you're going, no, I don't want to do that. Well, you guess what? It's a gift that has been handed to you to fulfill what it is you say you really want. And that's what you trust, and you will be given the resources to make it happen.
Yes, yes, so true. Is there anything you want to share that I haven't asked yet?
Well, I really do love the process of transformation. And so whether it's an old broken down sheep farm, like the place I bought 28 years ago, and even today, I get so excited about, and we just created this beautiful writer's retreat. And, you know, all the different, yesterday, Irina, I was in a massive, great field. I was mowing the field on a little lawnmower, sit-on lawnmower. I could send you pictures. It's hilarious. I love working here as well. So the work ethic, I think we have to work for our dreams and visions. But, you know, watching that transformation, watching people arrive here at Xenia, and then when they leave, everybody here says, oh my God, magic goes on here. These miracles happen. This is like a womb, a home. This is amazing. And in 28 years, like I say, all of that love gets projected back into this. So I think just the biggest thing is go for your dreams. I'm totally aligned, Irina, with your message, your brand. And that's my biggest vision, is hopefully to inspire other women in particular, and definitely single women, mothers, and still go for your dreams. You're not boggled down. It's just you got to maybe move a few things out of the way to see what is being asked of you. And from there, take action. Say yes and now, yes and now, yes and now. My message is yes and now. And then you will be blown away by what can happen.
Thank you. That's beautiful. If people would like to learn more about the you or the Xenia Center, where would they go?
They can check out xeniacenter.com, which is XENIACENTRE.com. But we do have both URLs, CENTER. Or you can read my book, which you can get from, I've got it in the Audible version, and also this book. And it has pictures. Second part of the book tells a lot about the stories and many other stories that led me to the retreat center and what I've learned along the way. So that's a great way to Amazon, Radical Trust, Angelyn Toth. So that's another way to find me, or just go to angelyntoth.com.
Thank you. It was so amazing to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your tips. Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Irina. It's been a pleasure as well. Have a great day.
You too.